The force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of light and darkness. But in the storm-lashed oceans of a remote world called Kamino, something arrived that the force had never touched. Something from beyond the stars, beyond even the known dimensions of reality itself. And the deep waters, ancient and unknowing, welcomed him as one of their own. Arthur Curry, king of Atlantis, had been investigating seismic disturbances in the Mariana Trench when the world tore open around him. One moment he'd been swimming through familiar depths, trident in hand, following the strange energy signatures his scientists had detected. The next, reality fractured like shattered glass, colors bleeding into impossible spectrums, and he was falling. No, drowning, through a void that screamed against every instinct his Atlantean physiology possessed. Then came the impact. He hit water traveling at terminal velocity, the collision sending shockwaves through liquid that felt wrong somehow. Denser, colder. The taste of salt was there, but mixed with mineral compositions his enhanced senses couldn't identify. Above, lightning split a slate-gray sky in perpetual twilight, and rain hammered the surface with mechanical regularity. No sun, no moon, just storm. Arthur's gills flexed, drawing in the alien water, and his body adapted instantly. Whatever world this was, its oceans could sustain him. He let himself sink, adjusting to the pressure, the darkness welcoming him like an old friend. His trident pulsed with faint golden light, Atlantean orichalcum, enchanted by his mother's people. Still functional despite the dimensional crossing. That was when he felt it, a presence, massive, ancient, moving through the depths below him with ponderous intent. Arthur's telepathy reached out instinctively, the way a man might extend his hand in darkness. On Earth, every creature of the sea opened their minds to him instantly. Sharks, whales, even the microscopic plankton responded to the king of Atlantis. Here, he encountered resistance. Not hostility, but unfamiliarity. These minds were structured differently, evolved under an alien star, shaped by evolutionary pressures he couldn't immediately comprehend. "I mean you no harm," he projected, pushing past the initial barrier with practiced ease. "I am lost. I seek understanding." The response came slowly, like a whale song played at half speed. Images flooded his consciousness, vast cities on stilts, rising from the ocean's surface, lights, technology, and beneath it all, a grief so profound it made Arthur's chest tighten. Genocide, displacement, extinction's shadow. "What happened here?" Arthur whispered to the water. The creature didn't answer in words, but in sensation. The memory of hunting grounds stripped bare, of entire species engineered into submission or destruction, of the ocean itself bent to serve the land dwellers above. The Kaminoans, he understood the name now, pulled from the creature's genetic memory, had conquered this world's seas not with respect, but with clinical efficiency. Arthur's jaw clenched. He'd seen this before. Surface dwellers who viewed the ocean as resource rather than realm, who took without asking, who destroyed without consequence. But here, light years from Earth, in a galaxy he didn't understand, the same crime had been committed. He needed answers. Arthur kicked upward, his powerful legs propelling him through the water at speeds that would shatter human bones. The pressure decreased as he rose, his Atlantean physiology adjusting effortlessly. Through the murky water, shapes began to emerge. Massive cylindrical structures descending from the surface like roots from a floating forest. Technology hummed through the liquid, a frequency that set his teeth on edge. He breached the surface in an explosion of foam and spray, rain immediately battering his face. The structure before him rose impossibly high, a city built on stilts above an ocean that stretched to every horizon. White metal gleamed despite the perpetual storm, and lights glowed from countless windows. Sleek landing platforms jutted from the central spire, and Arthur could see ships, not like any aircraft he recognized, docked at various levels. "Where the hell am I?" he muttered, treading water as he studied the architecture. Advanced, sterile, purpose-built rather than organically grown. This wasn't a city people lived in. It was a facility. A door opened on a lower platform, perhaps 50 feet above the waterline. 3 figures emerged, tall and impossibly thin, their movements graceful despite their elongated proportions. They wore fitted bodysuits and regarded the ocean below with what Arthur's instincts read as clinical interest rather than concern. One of them raised a device, pointing it in his direction. A beam of red light swept across the waves, and Arthur heard a high-pitched tone. Scanning technology. Time to make an entrance. Arthur dove beneath the surface, swam directly under their platform, and launched himself upward with enough force to clear the railing in a single bound. He landed in a crouch, water streaming from his orange and green scaled armor, trident held in a ready position that wasn't quite threatening, but promised capability. The 3 beings recoiled slightly, their large black eyes widening. Up close, they were even more alien. Pale gray skin stretched over delicate features, necks absurdly long and graceful. No visible weapons, but Arthur had learned long ago that appearance meant nothing when dealing with advanced technology. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance," Arthur said, straightening to his full height and immediately towering over them. "My name is Arthur Curry. I'm not from this world, and I'm not here by choice. I need to understand where I am and how to get home." The center Kaminoan tilted its head, the gesture eerily bird-like. When it spoke, its voice was soft, melodic, and touched with an accent Arthur couldn't place. "You arrived without a ship, without authorization, without registration in any republic or separatist database." Those enormous eyes studied him with unsettling intensity. "And you survived the ocean depths. Remarkable. Tell me, Arthur Curry, what are you?" If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Kaminoan's question hung in the rain-soaked air, and Arthur found himself genuinely uncertain how to answer. On Earth, he was king, hero, Justice League member, Atlantean. Here, he was an interdimensional refugee who just emerged from an ocean that apparently killed everyone else who tried. "I'm someone who belongs in the water," Arthur finally said, lowering his trident slightly. "Where I come from, I protect the oceans and everyone in them. But I don't know where I am or how I got here. That energy rift." "Energy rift?" The Kaminoan's tone sharpened with interest. "You claim to have traversed dimensional barriers? Impossible. No known technology." "I didn't have technology," Arthur interrupted, his patience wearing thin as cold rain continued to hammer down. "Something went wrong. An experiment in my world, maybe. Or some kind of cosmic accident. One second I was in the Pacific Ocean. The next, I was drowning through nothing. And then I hit your water hard enough to break bones if I wasn't built the way I am." The 3 Kaminoans exchanged glances, communicating in a language of subtle head movements and eye shifts that Arthur's surface world experience couldn't fully decode. Finally, the speaker gestured toward the door. "You will come with us. Lama Su, our Prime Minister, will want to examine this phenomenon. Do not attempt to leave or resist. Kamino's security measures are quite thorough." Arthur considered his options. He could probably fight his way out. His strength and durability had handled worse than 3 unarmed scientists. But to what end? He was stranded on an alien world in what was clearly an alien galaxy. He needed information more than he needed to prove his combat prowess. "Lead the way," he said, keeping his trident visible but unthreatening. "But I'm keeping this." The Kaminoan regarded the weapon with those unsettling black eyes. "We have no objection to ceremonial items, though I should warn you, Tipoca City is equipped to handle threats far more substantial than any melee weapon." They led him through corridors that gleamed with antiseptic perfection. Everything was white, gray, or pale blue, lit by strips of cold light that reminded Arthur of deep-sea bioluminescence. The architecture was simultaneously beautiful and unsettling, all flowing curves and organic shapes rendered in sterile materials. Through massive windows, he caught glimpses of the endless ocean and other cities rising from the waves like technological mushrooms. But it was the clones that stopped him cold. They passed a viewing window overlooking a vast chamber, and Arthur found himself staring at rows upon rows of transparent tubes, each containing a figure suspended in blue liquid. Men, identical men, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all in various stages of growth. Some were children, others adolescents, others fully grown and floating in what Arthur recognized as some kind of stasis. "What is this?" His voice came out harder than intended. The trident suddenly gripped tighter in his hand. The Kaminoan paused, following his gaze with what might have been pride. "Our product, the Grand Army of the Republic, commissioned 10 years ago by Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas, refined and perfected through Kaminoan cloning expertise. Each unit is genetically identical, modified for enhanced obedience, aggression suppression, and accelerated growth. The galaxy's finest soldiers, manufactured to specification." Arthur felt his stomach turn. "Those are people, living, thinking people. You're growing them like crops." "They are clones," the Kaminoan corrected, as if explaining something to a slow child. "Purpose-bred for military service. They possess limited independence within mission parameters, but their genetic conditioning ensures loyalty to the Republic, and they're slaves." Arthur's voice carried the weight of ocean depths. "You're breeding slaves." The Kaminoan's expression didn't change. Arthur wasn't even sure those faces could convey emotion, but something in its posture stiffened. "Your terminology is incorrect. Slaves imply sentient beings forced against their will. These clones are created with their purpose encoded into their very genetics. They desire to serve. It is quite literally what they are made for." Arthur had faced down dictators, warlords, and ocean kings drunk on power. He'd argued with surface world governments about their treatment of the seas. But this industrial production of sentient life, struck him as something uniquely horrible. "Where I come from," he said slowly, "we fought a war over whether beings could be property. We decided they couldn't. Seems your Republic missed that lesson." "Your world's ethics are irrelevant here," the Kaminoan replied, resuming its walk down the corridor. "Kamino provides a service. The Republic requires an army to combat the separatist threat. We fulfill that requirement with precision and efficiency. Personal feelings do not factor into commercial contracts." They reached a turbolift. Arthur recognized the concept, if not the specific technology, and descended deeper into the facility. More corridors, more chambers filled with growing clones. Arthur caught glimpses of training rooms where fully grown soldiers ran combat drills with mechanical precision. Their armor was white, identical, marked only by colored designations Arthur didn't understand. One of the soldiers noticed him through a window and paused mid-drill, his helmet turning to track the strange figure with the golden trident. Arthur met his eyes, human eyes, brown and questioning, and felt something crack inside his chest. These weren't droids. They were men. Men who'd never had a choice, never known anything but this facility, and the war waiting for them beyond it. The turbolift stopped, and the Kaminoans led him to a large conference room overlooking the ocean. Another Kaminoan waited there, taller than the others, wearing ceremonial robes that denoted rank. "Prime Minister Lama Su," Arthur's escort announced. "We have recovered the unidentified organism from the ocean. It claims dimensional displacement." Lama Su studied Arthur with those massive, expressionless eyes. "Fascinating. We detected an unusual energy signature approximately 1 standard hour ago, originating from the deep trenches. We assumed it was a malfunction in our monitoring equipment. Instead, we find you." Arthur straightened, letting his natural authority surface. The bearing of a king, even in exile. Arthur Curry of Earth. "And before we go any further, I want to know exactly what's happening here. This army you're building, this war you mentioned, and what gives anyone the right to create people as property?" For the first time, something resembling interest flickered across Lama Su's face. "You have strong opinions for someone who arrived mere hours ago and understands nothing of galactic politics." "I understand tyranny," Arthur shot back, "and I understand exploitation. They look the same everywhere, regardless of galaxy." Lama Su regarded Arthur with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing an unexpected variable. You will be housed in guest quarters while we determine the nature of your arrival and your potential utility. Ton, we will escort you. One of the Kaminoans from earlier bowed slightly. This way, please. Arthur wanted to argue, to demand answers, but exhaustion was beginning to creep into his muscles. Dimensional travel apparently took its toll even on Atlantean physiology. He needed time to think, to plan, and to understand exactly what kind of galaxy he'd landed in. The guest quarters were surprisingly comfortable, a spacious room with viewports overlooking the storm-racked ocean, furniture scaled for humanoid proportions, and what appeared to be a refreshment station with various colored liquids. Arthur ignored the amenities and went straight to the viewport, pressing his palm against the cool transparasteel. Down there, in the depths, he could still feel them. The native species, ancient and diminished, watching with alien patience. They'd survived the Kaminoan occupation, adapted to the margins of their own world, and now they felt him. A presence that understood water, that spoke their language of pressure and current and predator's awareness. I haven't forgotten you, he projected downward. Whatever was done here, I'll find a way to help. The response came as a surge of cautious hope. Arthur was still standing at the viewport when the door chimed 2 hours later. He turned, hand instinctively moving toward his trident as the door slid open to reveal something unexpected. Clones. 3 of them, still in white armor, helmets under their arms. They moved with military precision, but something in their body language suggested nervousness. The lead clone, his armor marked with blue trim, stepped forward and offered a crisp salute. Sir, CT-7567, but the others call me Rex. We were told you're being housed here temporarily. He paused, then added more quietly. We were also told you called us people. Arthur's expression softened. Up close, he could see the details the growth chambers had hidden. The slight variations in stance and expression that marked these men as individuals despite their identical genetics. Rex had a severity to his features, a commander's bearing despite his youth. The other 2, one with distinctive tattoos peeking above his collar, another with a more relaxed posture, watched Arthur with barely concealed curiosity. You are people, Arthur said simply. Anyone who tells you different is trying to justify their own crimes. The tattooed clone, his armor marked with what Arthur would learn was Ryle writing, grinned. I like him already. Name's Fives. This is Echo. He gestured to the 3rd clone. We're with the 501st, just finished a training cycle. Word spread fast about the guy who climbed out of the ocean without a breathing apparatus and faced down town. We like it was nothing. Breathing apparatus? Arthur frowned. Why would I need... Understanding dawned. Your people can't survive in the water? Humans drown, Rex said flatly. Kaminoan oceans are particularly lethal. Pressure, temperature, indigenous predators. Standard survival time without equipment is 90 seconds, give or take. You were down there for over an hour before surfacing. Arthur processed this information, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. These Kaminoans had built their entire civilization above the water, never truly understanding or respecting the realm below. They'd conquered the surface of an ocean world without ever belonging to it. Where I'm from, the ocean is my kingdom, Arthur explained. I can breathe water as easily as air, withstand pressures that would crush submarines, and I've swum depths your people probably don't have names for. It's part of what I am. Echo stepped forward, his expression intense. Then you're like the Jedi, enhanced, different. I don't know what a Jedi is, Arthur admitted, but I'm guessing they're rare? Peacekeepers, Rex explained, his tone carrying complex emotions Arthur couldn't quite parse. Guardians of the Republic. They can use the Force, an energy field that connects all living things, makes them faster, stronger, prescient. They're leading us in the war against the Separatists. Arthur filed away that information. Force, Republic, Separatists, a galaxy at war, with these manufactured soldiers as its frontline troops. This war, Arthur said carefully, you're fighting it by choice? The 3 clones exchanged glances, and Arthur saw something complicated pass between them, a conversation without words, born of identical genetics and shared experience. We were made for it, Fives said, his earlier humor fading. Literally engineered to be soldiers. Accelerated growth, enhanced combat instincts, conditioned for loyalty. We don't remember being children because we were grown in 2 years instead of 20. This, he gestured at the facility around them, is all we've ever known. But if you could choose, Arthur pressed, if someone gave you a real choice, to fight or not fight, to be soldiers or something else entirely, what would you pick? The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Rex's jaw worked. Echo's eyes dropped to the floor, and Fives looked at Arthur with an intensity that bordered on desperate. Nobody's ever asked us that, Rex finally said, his voice rough. We're clones. CT numbers. Property of the Kaminoan government under contract to the Galactic Republic. Our opinions on our own existence aren't part of the operational parameters. That's not an answer, Arthur said gently. Rex met his eyes, and Arthur saw a flash of something fierce and yearning. Then I don't know. We've never been allowed to think about who we could be instead of what we are. The admission hung in the air, more powerful than any weapon. These men, and Arthur refused to think of them as anything else, had been robbed of the most fundamental right, self-determination. They'd been created with a purpose, conditioned to accept it, and never given space to question whether they wanted it. Arthur had been born to two worlds, caught between Atlantis and the surface, never quite belonging to either. But he'd always had a choice. His mother had given him that gift, even as she'd been forced to return to the sea. These clones had nothing. I want to show you something, Arthur said suddenly. Do you have breathing equipment? Suits that would let you survive underwater? Fives brightened. Environmental gear? Yeah. Why? Because there's a whole world beneath this city that your masters have never bothered to understand. And if you want to know what real freedom looks like, I'll show you. Arthur moved to the viewport, gesturing at the storm-racked ocean below. Your Kaminoan creators think they own this planet. They don't. They just conquered the surface. The depths belong to something else, something older. And I can introduce you. Rex's expression hardened with military caution. We're not authorized for recreational activities. If the command structure discovered... I'm not asking for authorization, Arthur interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of a king used to making decisions that changed nations. I'm asking if you want to see something beautiful, something that wasn't engineered or controlled or predetermined, something wild. Echo smiled, small and uncertain. I've never seen wild before. Then get your gear, Arthur said, and I'll show you what this world looks like when nobody's trying to own it. The clones returned an hour later wearing form-fitting environmental suits, breathing apparatus secured to their backs. They moved with practiced efficiency, clearly familiar with the equipment, though Fives kept adjusting his rebreather like it was uncomfortable. Use these a few times in aquatic combat training, Rex explained as they made their way through empty corridors, the late hour providing cover for their unauthorized excursion. Never deeper than 50 meters. The Kaminoans don't encourage exploring the oceans, say it's unnecessary risk. Of course they do, Arthur muttered. They'd descended to a lower maintenance level where moon pools allowed submersibles access to the water below. The pool chamber was empty, automated systems humming softly, waves lapping at the metal edges. They're afraid of what's down there. Afraid you might learn the truth about this world. Which is? Echo asked, securing his helmet. That they're colonizers, Arthur said bluntly, stripping off his shirt to reveal the scaled armor beneath. Atlantean design, form-fitting and more durable than any surface material. His trident gleamed in the low light. That this planet had a thriving ecosystem before the Kaminoans industrialized it, and that they destroyed most of it to build their cities. The three clones absorbed this information silently. Finally, Fives chuckled darkly. Guess that makes us products of colonization. Fitting. Arthur led them to the pool's edge. Your suit's rated for deep pressure? Spec says 1,000 meters, Rex confirmed. Below that, structural integrity becomes questionable. We won't need to go that deep. The creatures I've been communicating with hunt in the mid-levels, maybe 300 meters down. Stay close to me. If anything goes wrong, I'll get you to the surface. Arthur dove cleanly into the water, barely making a splash. The clones followed more cautiously, their suits' thrusters engaging automatically to control descent. Arthur waited just below the surface, watching them adapt to the water's embrace, and felt a surge of satisfaction. These men had been engineered for war, conditioned to fight on 100 different terrains, but nobody had thought to show them wonder. He led them down, his powerful legs and streamlined body cutting through the water with barely any effort. The clones struggled to keep pace despite their mechanical assistance, and Arthur consciously slowed, circling back to ensure they stayed together. The light from Topoka City faded as they descended, replaced by bioluminescent traces, algae and microorganisms painting trails of blue-green light in the darkness. "I'm here," Arthur projected into the depths. "I've brought guests, humans, like the Kaminoans, but different. They don't know what was done here. They're victims, too." The response came as a shift in water pressure, a current that seemed to guide them rather than push. Arthur followed it, gesturing for the clones to stay behind him. Rex had his hand on a blaster. Arthur had noticed all three were armed, but he appreciated the restraint in not drawing it. Then they appeared. The creatures were nothing like Earth's marine life. They resembled a fusion of manta ray and squid, bodies perhaps 15 meters across, trailing tentacles that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. Their skin shifted colors in ways that Arthur's telepathy recognized as communication, a language of light and shadow. 6 of them circled the group with graceful, unhurried movements. Through the clones' helmet comms, Arthur heard Fives whisper, "Holy Criff. These are humans." Arthur projected toward the creatures, gesturing at the clones, not Kaminoans. "They were made here, but they don't know your history. They don't know what their creators did." The largest creature, Matriarch, Arthur understood through the telepathic connection, drifted closer to Rex. Its tentacles extended, not threateningly, but exploringly. Rex froze, military training warring with basic human instinct, as the bioluminescent limbs brushed against his suit's faceplate. Images flooded Arthur's mind, shared through the telepathic link he'd established. Kamino as it had been, teeming with life, dozens of sentient species inhabiting different ocean depths. Then the Kaminoans came, rising from their own evolutionary cradle with technology and ambition. They'd seen a world covered in water and decided it needed to be conquered, not understood. The genocide had been methodical. Species that competed with Kaminoan food sources were engineered into extinction. Creatures that damaged the Stilt City's foundations were eliminated. Within 5 generations, Kamino's oceans had been reduced to a sterile environment. Functional, controlled, empty of anything that might challenge Kaminoan supremacy. Only a few species survived. The Aiwa, flying creatures the Kaminoans now used as mounts, had been domesticated. The deep-dwelling species Arthur now swam with had retreated to trenches too deep for Kaminoan technology to easily reach. They'd watched from the abyss as their world was sterilized. Arthur shared the images with the clones through direct physical contact, pressing his hands to their helmets and channeling the telepathic information. He felt their minds, so young despite their mature bodies, so conditioned to accept what they were told, crack open with understanding. "They killed everything," Echo's voice was hollow over the comm. "Just removed anything inconvenient, made the ocean dead except for what they wanted." "Sound familiar?" Arthur asked quietly. Rex was silent for a long moment, still frozen as the matriarch's tentacles explored his suit. Then, "We're the same, purpose-built, everything inconvenient removed. Individuality suppressed, engineered to be exactly what our creators needed and nothing more." "No," Arthur said firmly, "you're not the same. You're survivors of the same philosophy, but you're alive. You think, you feel, you question. That makes you everything your creators didn't plan for." Fives laughed, the sound edged with something between hysteria and revelation. "We're defective. By their standards, any clone who questions their purpose is defective. They recondition us or decommission us." "Then maybe defective is what this galaxy needs," Arthur said. He swam closer to the matriarch, his trident catching what little light existed at this depth. "These creatures have been waiting. for something to change, for the Kaminoans to face consequences, for justice. The matriarch's colors shifted, a pattern Arthur understood as questioning. "I don't know how yet," Arthur admitted. "I'm trapped here, same as you. But where I come from, I'm a king. I protect those who can't protect themselves. I fight for the ocean and everything in it. That doesn't change just because I'm in a different galaxy." The creature's tentacles withdrew from Rex, and its colors shifted to something Arthur recognized as cautious hope, the same emotion he'd felt from it during his first dive. These beings had been defeated, their world stolen, their species reduced to shadows hiding in the deep. But they hadn't given up. They'd survived, waiting for something to change the equation. Arthur turned to the clones. "You asked me what I am. I'm someone who knows what it's like to be caught between worlds, never quite fitting into either one. Someone who had to fight for the right to be taken seriously, to be seen as more than just a half-breed curiosity. And someone who decided that if the world wouldn't change for me, I'd change the world." "That's treason," Rex said, but his voice lacked conviction. "What you're suggesting, questioning the Republic, the Jedi, the entire structure that created us. Is it treason to want to be free?" Arthur challenged. "Is it treason to decide your life should be your own? Because if so, my entire civilization is built on treason. We were Atlanteans who refused to stay hidden in the depths. We claimed our place in the world and dared anyone to tell us we were wrong." Echo drifted closer to one of the smaller creatures, extending a hand toward its glowing skin. The creature allowed the contact, its colors shifting to something gentle. "I never knew anything like this existed. Beautiful, wild, free." His voice cracked. "We've never been any of those things." "You could be," Arthur said. "You could be so much more than what you were made for." The matriarch's colors flared suddenly, a warning pattern Arthur recognized even before his telepathy caught the danger signal. The water pressure shifted, technology disturbing the natural currents. Something was descending from Topoka City. Multiple somethings, moving fast. "We need to surface," Rex barked, military instincts taking over. "Now, we've been detected." But Arthur was already moving, positioning himself between the clones and the approaching threat. Through the murky water, lights appeared. Searchlights attached to Kaminoan submersibles, at least 4 of them, descending in a controlled formation. The creatures scattered, vanishing into the darkness with speed that belied their size. The clones activated their suits' thrusters, beginning an ascent that their equipment could handle safely. Arthur stayed with them, his enhanced vision tracking the submersible's approach. They breached the surface near the moon pool just as Kaminoan security personnel arrived, weapons drawn, sleek energy rifles that hummed with lethal intent. Tanwi stood at the center of the group, her expression as unreadable as ever. "Unauthorized ocean access," she said flatly. "Interaction with undomesticated life forms. Removing Republic property from secure areas without proper authorization." Her enormous eyes fixed on Arthur. "You are a disruptive element, Arthur Curry." Lama Su was correct to suggest immediate containment. Arthur hauled himself from the pool, water streaming from his armor, trident held loosely but ready. The 3 clones emerged beside him, removing their helmets with movements that suggested they were ready to fight. "Containment?" Arthur's voice carried the ocean's depths. "Is that what you call it when someone shows your property they're actually people?" "They are clones," Tanwi corrected. "Purpose-bred military assets. Their questioning nature is a design flaw we have been attempting to minimize through conditioning protocols." "Their questioning nature," Arthur said slowly, dangerously, "is called consciousness, sentience, the thing that makes them alive instead of machines." Rex stepped forward, and Arthur felt the shift in the room's dynamic. The clone commander's hand rested on his blaster, but his stance was protective rather than aggressive. "Ma'am, we take full responsibility for the unauthorized excursion." The visitor was disoriented, requested assistance understanding Kamino's environment, and we provided escort as a security measure. It was a lie, smoothly delivered with military precision. Arthur felt a surge of respect for the young man covering for them all. Tanwi's gaze shifted between the clones and Arthur, calculating. You will return to your barracks. This incident will be noted in your files. Further contact with the dimensional anomaly is prohibited. And me? Arthur asked. You, Tanwi said, have attracted attention we had hoped to avoid. A Jedi delegation arrives tomorrow to investigate reports of an unusual presence on Kamino. You will remain in your quarters until they arrive. As security escorted Arthur away, he caught Rex's eyes one final time. The clone commander gave a tiny nod. Not submission, but acknowledgement. Something had changed in those depths. Understanding had been shared, and in a galaxy built on control and conditioning, understanding was the first step toward rebellion. Arthur spent the night in what amounted to luxurious confinement, his quarters monitored by security systems he could sense, but not quite identify. He'd tested the door, locked from outside, and the viewports, reinforced transparasteel thick enough to withstand his strength without shattering. The Kaminoans were cautious. He'd give them that. But they'd made a critical error. They'd left him near the ocean. Arthur pressed his hand against the viewport, reaching out with his telepathy. The connection he'd forged with Kamino's native species remained strong, a thread of consciousness linking surface to depths. Through their alien minds, he could sense the city's foundations, the massive support pillars driven into the ocean floor, the aquatic infrastructure the Kaminoans relied upon. When the time comes, he projected downward. I may need your help. The response was immediate, agreement, tinged with anticipation of finally striking back against their oppressors. Dawn came, or what passed for dawn on a world in perpetual storm. The lighting shifted slightly, gray becoming marginally less gray, and Arthur heard activity in the corridors outside. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving with purpose. The door slid open, revealing Lama Su flanked by security, but Arthur's attention locked immediately on the two figures behind them. They wore robes of brown and tan, simple garments that somehow conveyed more authority than the Kaminoans' elaborate bodysuits. The first was a Togruta female, her orange skin marked with white patterns, 3 head tails hanging past her shoulders. She moved with a warrior's grace, and Arthur's instincts pegged her as dangerous despite her calm expression. The second was human, bearded, wearing the confident smile of someone who'd talked his way out of more trouble than he'd fought through. His hand rested casually near his belt, where some kind of cylindrical weapon hung. Arthur Curry, the bearded man said, his accent crisp and distinctly civilized. I'm Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this is Jedi Master Shak Tai. We're here to discuss your rather unusual arrival on Kamino. Jedi, the peacekeepers Rex had mentioned. Arthur straightened, keeping his trident in sight but not threatening. Masters, I'd say it's a pleasure, but I'm not fond of being locked up without charges. Shak Ti's head tails twitched slightly. The Kaminoans were concerned about your influence on the clone troopers. They reported that you've been spreading dissent. I've been spreading truth, Arthur corrected. There's a difference. Obi-Wan's expression shifted, amusement fading to something more serious. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more comfortable. Lama Su, if you would provide us with a conference room? Private, preferably. The Prime Minister's expression, if those alien features could convey expression, suggested displeasure, but he gestured agreement. The southern observation deck. You will not be disturbed. Minutes later, Arthur found himself in a spacious room overlooking the ocean, facing 2 Jedi across a sleek table. Obi-Wan had produced a datapad and was reviewing something, while Shak Tai studied Arthur with unsettling intensity. You're not from this galaxy, she said suddenly. I can sense it. The Force touches all living things but you. There's an absence, not darkness, but otherness. As if you exist slightly outside the natural order. Arthur filed away that information. This force they kept mentioning, some kind of energy field, didn't recognize him. That could be useful. Dimensional displacement. I was investigating anomalies in my world's ocean when something pulled me through to here. I didn't ask to arrive on Kamino, and I didn't ask to discover your republic is built on slave labor. Obi-Wan's eyes sharpened. That's a serious accusation. Is it? Arthur leaned forward. I've seen the chambers, rows of tubes growing men like crops. I've talked to the clones, young men with accelerated aging, conditioned for obedience, engineered to die in your war. They have thoughts, feelings, dreams they're never allowed to pursue. They're sentient beings created as property. In my world, we have a word for that. The clones volunteered, Obi-Wan began, but his voice lacked conviction. They were created with their volunteering built in, Arthur shot back. That's not choice. That's programming. You're a smart man, Kenobi. You know the difference. Shakti's expression was troubled, her head tails moving in patterns Arthur was beginning to recognize as emotional tells. The Jedi did not commission the clone army. We inherited it when we discovered its existence. The Republic needed defenders against the Separatist threat, and the clones were already trained, already prepared. Already conveniently available, Arthur interrupted. You didn't question where they came from or what it meant to use them. You saw soldiers and decided that was enough. We treat them with honor, Shakti said firmly. I have commanded clone troopers for 3 years. They are brave, loyal, skilled warriors who deserve respect, but not freedom. Arthur's voice was quiet, but it carried ocean depths. Not choice, not the option to say, I don't want to fight. Tell me, Master Shakti, what happens to a clone who refuses to go to war? The silence was damning. Obi-Wan set down his datapad. You've been here less than 2 days, and already you're questioning the foundations of our republic. Rather presumptuous for someone who doesn't understand galactic politics. I understand people being used, Arthur said. I understand exploitation dressed up in noble language. And I understand that sometimes outsiders see things clearly precisely because they're not invested in the comfortable lies. Shakti stood, pacing to the viewport. Her reflection in the transparent steel showed conflict warring across her features. The Jedi Order has debated the ethics of the clone army since the war began. But we are peacekeepers in a galaxy tearing itself apart. The Separatists field billions of battle droids. Without the clones, entire systems would fall to tyranny. So you choose one tyranny over another, Arthur observed. The tyranny of forcing sentient beings to fight and die, versus the tyranny of the Separatists. Ever consider there might be a third option? Which is? Obi-Wan asked. Give the clones a choice, real choice. Let them decide if they want to fight. Train volunteers. Build an army of people who chose to defend the Republic because they believe in it, not because they were engineered to believe in it. That would take years, Obi-Wan said. The war is now. Systems are dying now. Then the Republic should have thought of that before it accepted an army of slaves. Arthur stood, meeting both Jedi's eyes. I don't know your politics. I don't know your war. But I know right from wrong, and what's happening here is wrong. If you can't see that, then your force doesn't teach wisdom. It teaches convenient blindness. Shakti turned from the viewport, her expression troubled, but resolute. What would you have us do? The clones exist. The war exists. We cannot unmake either reality. Start by acknowledging their people, Arthur said. Not property, not products. People. Give them rights. Pay them. Let them refuse missions. Create a path for those who want to leave military service. It won't fix what's already been done, but it's a start. Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. The Senate would never approve such measures. The clone army is too valuable, too necessary. Then your Senate is corrupt, Arthur said bluntly. And you know it. Before either Jedi could respond, alarms shrieked through the facility. Red lights flashed, and Arthur felt the city shudder. A deep, resonant impact transmitted through the support structures. Obi-Wan's hand flew to his belt, and suddenly he held an activated lightsaber. Blue blade humming with energy that made Arthur's Atlantean senses tingle. Shakti's own weapon, green-bladed, appeared just as quickly. We're under attack, Shakti said, her montrals twitching as she sensed something Arthur couldn't. Separatist forces, multiple signatures, approaching from orbital insertion. Through the viewport, Arthur saw them. Shapes falling through the storm, repulsor engines flaring as they arrested their descent. Dropships, dozens of them, disgorging what looked like walking machines. Droids, Arthur realized, skeletal humanoid forms clutching blasters. and descending with them, massive aquatic assault craft that splashed into the ocean and began releasing sleeker machines designed for underwater combat. "They're targeting the cloning facilities," Obi-Wan said, already moving toward the door. "If they destroy the genetic templates, the Republic loses its ability to produce new clones." "Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing," Arthur muttered, but he was already following, trident in hand. Whatever his feelings about the clone army's existence, he wasn't about to let war machines slaughter the clones themselves. They burst into the corridor to find chaos. Clone troopers rushed past in organized squads, weapons ready, shouting coordinates and tactical updates. Explosions rocked the facility as separatist artillery found its marks. Through windows, Arthur saw battle droids advancing across landing platforms, their blaster fire cutting down clones who tried to hold defensive positions. And below, through floor viewports, he saw the Aqua droids, sleek, deadly machines designed for underwater combat, descending toward the city's foundations. Rex appeared from a side corridor, his armor now marked with blue paint and bearing the scars of previous battles. "Generals!" he saluted sharply to the Jedi. "Separatist assault force, approximately battalion strength. They've already breached sectors 7 and 12. We're holding at the primary cloning chambers, but they've deployed aquatic units toward the support structures." Arthur's attention locked on that detail. "They're going after the foundations. If those supports fail, Tipoca City falls into the ocean," Rex confirmed grimly. "And every clone, every Kaminoan, everyone in this facility drowns." Shaak Ti's expression hardened. "Deploy all available forces to defend the cloning chambers. Kenobi, coordinate with the fleet." "The fleet won't arrive for hours," Obi-Wan interrupted. "We're on our own until then." Arthur looked at the three of them, 2 Jedi preparing to defend a slave army, 1 clone commander ready to die protecting his brothers and their creators. The irony was sharp enough to cut, but below, in the depths, he felt the ancient species stirring. They sensed the attack, the machines invading their ocean, and they remembered what the Kaminoans had done to their world. "I can stop the Aqua droids," Arthur said suddenly, "but I'll need the clones to hold the surface defenses." Rex's eyes narrowed. "Sir, with respect, you're one man with a..." He eyed the trident skeptically. "A spear. Those Aqua droids are designed for deep water combat, and there are dozens of them." Arthur smiled, and there was nothing human in the expression. It was the smile of a predator who'd just realized he was in his element. "Commander, where I come from, I'm the king of Atlantis. I've fought wars in ocean trenches. I've commanded armies of sea creatures against surface invasions. And I've never, ever lost a battle in the water." He turned to Obi-Wan. "Can your Force sense lies?" The Jedi studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You believe what you're saying? That much I can sense. Then trust me." Arthur looked at Rex. "Get me to a moon pool. And tell your brothers that if they see sea creatures attacking the droids, don't shoot them. They're on our side." The battle above raged with increasing intensity as Arthur sprinted through Tipoca City's corridors, Rex and a squad of clone troopers flanking him. Explosions shook the walls, and through viewports, Arthur caught glimpses of the carnage. Battle droids advancing with mechanical precision, while clones fought desperately to hold each corridor, each room, each meter of white metal hallway. They reached the moon pool facility to find it already breached. 2 Aqua droids had surfaced, their sleek forms bristling with blaster cannons and torpedo tubes. They'd killed the Kaminoan technicians stationed there, gray bodies sprawled across white floors, and were attempting to interface with the facility's systems. Rex and his squad opened fire immediately, blue blaster bolts converging on the droids. The machine's shields absorbed most of the impact. But it bought Arthur the seconds he needed. He dove into the pool without hesitation, the cool water embracing him like a lover's arms. His gills opened, his enhanced vision cutting through the murk, and his telepathy expanded outward with the force of a tidal wave. "Now!" The response was immediate and overwhelming. From the depths, they came. The ray squid creatures Arthur had communed with, dozens of them, rising through the water with surprising speed. But they weren't alone. Smaller species emerged from trenches and crevices. predators that had learned to hunt in the margins the Kaminoans left them. Schools of armored fish with razor teeth, eel analogs that generated bioelectric shocks, creatures that defied Earth classification, shaped by alien evolution, but unified by Arthur's call to arms. The first aquadroid never saw them coming. 3 of the ray squids hit it simultaneously, their bioluminescent tentacles wrapping around its chassis with crushing force. The droid's shields sparked and failed under the pressure of limbs that could withstand the deepest ocean trenches. Metal shrieked, joints shattered, and the droid's optical sensors went dark as it was torn apart and dragged into the abyss. Arthur didn't watch the destruction. He was already swimming toward the city's foundations, his trident cutting through the water, his telepathy coordinating the swarm of marine life following him. Through their distributed senses, he could perceive the battlefield in 3 dimensions. Every aquadroid, every support pillar, every vulnerable point in Tipoca City's infrastructure. The Separatists had deployed perhaps 40 aquadroids, and they were working with disturbing efficiency. Arthur watched through borrowed senses as one planted explosive charges on a primary support structure. If that pillar fell, the cascading failure would bring down a quarter of the city. Arthur poured on speed, his powerful legs propelling him through the water faster than any human swimmer could manage. He closed the distance in seconds, his trident already swinging in a wide arc that built momentum through the water's resistance. The droid turned, sensors detecting him too late. Arthur's trident, Atlantean orichalcum forged by his mother's people, enchanted to never break, blessed by ancient seas, punched through the droid's shields like they were tissue paper. The trident's prongs speared through the machine's central processor, electricity arcing across its chassis as critical systems failed. Arthur wrenched the weapon free, letting the dead droid sink, and immediately turned his attention to the explosive charges. His enhanced strength made short work of the magnetic clamps, and he hurled the bombs into the deep water where they detonated harmlessly, sending shockwaves rippling through the ocean. All around him, the battle raged in 3 dimensions. The ray squids had claimed another 2 droids, their tentacles tearing through metal with patient fury. The electric eels swarmed a 3rd, their combined voltage overloading its systems in a cascade of sparks. The armored fish schools acted as living projectiles, their razor teeth finding gaps in the droids' armor plating. But the aquadroids were learning, adapting their tactics. One fired a spread of micro-torpedoes into a school of fish, the explosions leaving the water cloudy with blood and shredded tissue. Another activated some kind of sonic weapon, the frequency designed to repel marine life, and the creatures Arthur commanded recoiled in pain. Arthur felt their distress through the telepathic link, and fury ignited in his chest. These machines were invading his realm, harming creatures under his protection, in service to a war these beings had never asked to be part of. He channeled that fury into action. Arthur swam through the battlefield like a force of nature, his trident finding targets with unerring accuracy. He'd fought underwater wars before, Atlantean civil conflicts, surface world invasions, ancient rivals rising from forgotten trenches. This was no different. The principles remained: mobility, 3-dimensional awareness, and the understanding that water amplified some forces while dampening others. The aquadroid's blaster fire scattered through the water, losing coherence and energy. Their torpedoes were dangerous but slow, trackable, easily avoided by someone who could sense pressure changes and water displacement. Their melee weapons, extending blades and crushing pincers, were formidable but predictable. Arthur was neither slow nor predictable. He came up beneath one droid, driving his trident through its underbelly where armor was thinnest. Used its sinking bulk as a springboard to launch himself at another, his momentum and strength combining to rip the machine's head unit clean off its shoulders. Dodged torpedo fire by reading the water's currents, feeling the displacement before the weapons even launched. Through his telepathic coordination, the marine species fought with unprecedented unity. The ray squids focused on the largest droids, their crushing strength overwhelming shields through sheer persistent pressure. The eels targeted sensors and joints, their electricity disrupting droid targeting systems. The fish schools harassed and distracted, drawing fire away from more vulnerable creatures. It was a symphony of violence, conducted by Arthur's will, played out in the medium he knew better than anywhere else in any universe. But the Separatists had sent one more surprise. Arthur sensed it before he saw it. A massive displacement of water, something huge descending from above. He looked up through the murky water and felt his blood run cold. A Trident-class assault ship, he pulled the name from residual telepathic impressions left by panicked Kaminoan thoughts, was descending into the ocean itself. The vessel was enormous, perhaps 200 meters long, bristling with weapons, and releasing a dozen more aqua droids from its deployment bays. And at its bow, some kind of massive drill assembly activated, already beginning to rotate as it aimed for Tapoka City's central support column. If that pillar fell, the entire city would collapse. Thousands of clones would die. The Kaminoans' entire civilization would be shattered. And while Arthur had complex feelings about both groups, he wasn't about to let mass murder happen on his watch. "I need everything," he projected to the swarm. "Every creature within range. This is our ocean. They don't get to destroy it." The response came as a surge of predatory agreement. More creatures emerged from the depths, species Arthur hadn't even known existed, drawn by his call and their own rage at the machines invading their territory. The ocean itself seemed to come alive, a writhing mass of teeth and tentacles and bioelectric fury. Arthur swam directly toward the assault ship, his trident gleaming even in the darkness. This was insane. He knew it was insane. One man against a capital ship designed for underwater warfare. But he'd done insane before, and in the water, he'd never lost. The assault ship's automated defenses tracked him immediately. Dozens of point defense blasters swiveling to target the single humanoid signature approaching at impossible speed. Blaster bolts streamed through the water, creating superheated channels that boiled and cavitated. Arthur twisted through the barrage, his enhanced reflexes and three-dimensional awareness letting him anticipate firing patterns. He dove deep, then angled up, using the assault ship's own bulk to shield him from its weapons. The marine swarm followed, thousands of creatures creating a living storm that confused the ship's sensors. He hit the hull at full speed, his trident punching through the outer armor plating like it was made of foil. Atlantean weapons were designed to pierce the hides of sea monsters and the hulls of enemy submarines. Separatist engineering stood no chance. Arthur tore through the metal, ripping open a gash large enough to swim through. Inside, he found himself in a flooded compartment. Battle droids floundering in water they weren't designed for, their joints struggling against the pressure and resistance. They never stood a chance. Arthur moved through them like a shark through a school of fish, his trident finding targets with brutal efficiency. These weren't the sophisticated aqua droids, just standard battle droids that happened to be waterproofed. They were slow, clumsy, helpless against an opponent who belonged in this environment. But destroying droids wasn't his goal. He needed to stop that drill. Arthur navigated through the flooded ship by instinct and enhanced senses, following power signatures his Atlantean heritage let him perceive. The drill's assembly was forward, driven by massive hydraulics and power cores that hummed through the water like mechanical whale song. He found the power distribution node protected by reinforced plating and electronic warfare countermeasures that would have stopped any conventional attack. Arthur wasn't conventional. He braced himself against a bulkhead and drove his trident into the node with all his considerable strength. Electricity arced across the water, painful even for his enhanced durability. But he held on. The trident's enchantments, magic his mother's people had woven into the metal, conducted and channeled the energy, creating feedback that cascaded through the ship's systems. The drill screamed, metal grinding against itself, and then stopped. Emergency klaxons wailed through the water, and Arthur felt the ship beginning to list as its control systems failed. Time to leave. He swam back through the breached hull just as the ship's power core initiated emergency shutdown. Without power, the massive vessel began to sink, its weight dragging it toward the ocean floor. The remaining aqua droids attempted to follow, but the marine swarm was already on them, creatures driven by instinct, and Arthur's will tearing into metal with organic fury. Arthur surfaced at the moon pool to find the facility secured. Rex and his squad had eliminated the droids that breached inside, and through the facility's windows, Arthur could see the tide of battle turning. The Separatist ground forces were in retreat, their assault broken by determined clone defense and, Arthur was gratified to see, the complete failure of their underwater assault. Rex helped pull him from the pool, eyes wide as he took in Arthur's appearance. Water streaming from his armor, trident still crackling with residual electricity. expression fierce with the aftermath of battle. "What happened down there?" the commander asked. "Our sensors went crazy. Massive energy discharges. The assault ship's signature just disappeared, and something destroyed 47 Aqua droids in less than 10 minutes. Arthur smiled, tired, but satisfied. "I made some friends, and I reminded the Separatists that not everything in this galaxy fights the way they expect." Through the windows, Arthur could see the ocean's surface churning as the ray squids and their kin celebrated victory in their own way. Displays of bioluminescence and acrobatic breaches that painted the storm-racked sky with light. The ocean had defended itself. And Arthur had shown the galaxy that even in a war defined by technology and the Force, sometimes the oldest powers, the power of nature, of unity, of the sea itself, could still change everything. The aftermath of battle left Tipoca City scarred but standing. Clone troopers moved through corridors clearing debris and tending to wounded brothers. Kaminoan technicians assessed damage with clinical efficiency, already calculating repair timelines and resource requirements. And in the southern observation deck, Arthur found himself once again facing the two Jedi, though the dynamic had shifted considerably. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood at the viewport, watching the ocean where periodic flashes of bioluminescence still marked the marine creature's victory celebration. His expression was thoughtful, calculating, and, Arthur sensed, deeply troubled. Shakti paced, her montrals twitching with barely suppressed emotion. "You commanded them, the sea creatures. I felt it through the Force, a connection, but not the Force itself, something else. Something older." "Telepathy," Arthur confirmed, setting his trident against the wall. He was exhausted, his Atlantean physiology demanding rest after the extended battle, but he remained standing. "Where I come from, I can communicate with all marine life. It's part of what I am. Here, it took some adjustment. Your species evolved differently, but the principle holds. And you rallied an entire ecosystem to defend Kamino," Obi-Wan said quietly. "A world these creatures have every reason to hate, given what the Kaminoans did to them. Why?" "Not for the Kaminoans," Arthur said bluntly. "For the clones. They didn't ask to be created. They didn't choose this war. But they were here, fighting and dying, and I wasn't about to let machines slaughter them just because I have philosophical problems with their existence." Rex entered then. His armor scorched and dented, but his bearings still military precise. Behind him came Fives and Echo, both looking worse for wear, but alive. They saluted the Jedi, then nodded to Arthur with what looked like genuine respect. "Casualty report," Rex said. 14 clones KIA, 37 wounded. Kaminoan losses at 23 dead, 16 injured. Complete destruction of the Separatist assault force. No survivors, no successful retreats. Generals, it could have been much worse." "It would have been much worse," Shakti corrected, without Arthur's intervention below. "Commander, your men witnessed what happened in the water?" "Some of it, sir," Rex confirmed. "The observation posts caught footage before the fighting got too intense." "Permission to speak freely?" Obi-Wan gestured assent. "What we saw was impossible by conventional standards. One man destroyed a capital ship and coordinated what looked like thousands of sea creatures in a defensive action that saved this facility. With respect, generals, we fought alongside Jedi for 3 years, and I've never seen anything like that. Because it's not the Force," Arthur said. "It's something else. My people's gift, maybe, or just evolution in a different universe. But it's real, it's mine, and I used it to save lives. That's what matters." Fives stepped forward, his usual humor subdued by battle's aftermath. "Sir, the brothers are asking questions. About you. About what they saw. Some of them are saying you're proof that there are powers in the galaxy the Jedi don't control, don't understand. Others are saying you're the first person who's treated us like we matter beyond our tactical value." Arthur felt the weight of those words. He'd stumbled into this galaxy by accident, landed on one water world among billions, and somehow become a symbol for genetically engineered soldiers questioning their place in the universe. "I treated you like people," Arthur said simply. "Because that's what you are. If that's revolutionary in this galaxy, then your galaxy has a serious problem." Obi-Wan turned from the viewport, his expression grave. "Arthur, what you did today was extraordinary. You saved thousands of lives and turned the tide of a battle we were losing. The Council will want to meet you, to understand your abilities and your intentions. My intentions? Arthur's voice hardened. I intend to find a way home. Back to my world. My ocean, my people. But while I'm stuck here, I'm not going to stand by and watch injustice happen. Not when I can do something about it. Even if that something challenges the Republic itself? Shakti asked quietly. Especially then. Arthur met her eyes steadily. You're Jedi, peacekeepers, guardians of justice. So tell me, is it just to create sentient beings as property? Is it just to fight a war using soldiers who never had a choice? You felt uncomfortable when I asked before. That discomfort is your conscience telling you something's wrong. The silence stretched, heavy with implications. Finally, Obi-Wan spoke, his voice carefully neutral. The Jedi serve the Republic. We do not make policy, we execute it. The Senate commissioned the clone army, and we use them to defend civilization against the separatist threat. You hide behind that excuse, Arthur challenged. Following orders, serving the system. I've heard it before in my world's darkest moments. It's never an adequate defense. Rex shifted uncomfortably, caught between military discipline and the questions Arthur's words raised. Fives and Echo exchanged glances, their body language suggesting they were listening very carefully to this conversation. Shakti's montrals flattened against her head. Anger, Arthur guessed, or frustration. You have been in this galaxy for 3 days. You know nothing of our history, our struggles, the complexity of our situation. The Separatists would tear apart the Republic, subjugate billions under corporate tyranny. The clone army is the only force capable of stopping them. Then find another force, Arthur shot back. Build a volunteer military, offer the clones freedom and let them choose to fight. There are always other options. You just have to be willing to see them and fight for them. The war wouldn't wait, Obi-Wan said, but his convictions seemed to be wavering. And the political will doesn't exist. Most Republic citizens don't even think about the clones as people. They're just the troops, abstractions keeping the war distant and manageable. Then change that, Arthur insisted. You're Jedi. You have influence. Use it. Because if you don't, you're complicit in their enslavement. The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Arthur saw Shakti's hand drift toward her lightsaber, not threatening but reflexive. The gesture of someone confronted with an uncomfortable truth and instinctively reaching for familiar tools. But it was Lama Su's arrival that broke the tension. The Prime Minister glided into the room, flanked by Tan Wei and a cohort of Kaminoan security. His enormous eyes fixed on Arthur with something that might have been fear masked as calculation. The dimensional anomaly has proven useful in defending our facility, Lama Su said, his melodic voice carrying an edge. However, it has also proven profoundly disruptive to our operations. The clone units are asking questions, displaying increased independent thought, showing signs of individuality that our conditioning protocols are designed to suppress. You mean showing signs of being alive, Arthur corrected coldly. I mean showing signs of defectiveness, Lama Su countered. We have contractual obligations to the Republic to deliver standardized, reliable military assets. Units that question orders, that develop personal philosophies, that demonstrate unpredictability. These are flaws in the product. Arthur felt his hands curl into fists. They are not products. They are precisely products, Lama Su insisted. Manufactured according to specifications, sold under contract, delivered for a purpose. Their genetic material belongs to the Kaminoan government. Their training represents our investment. Their very existence is our intellectual property. You may have saved our facility, Arthur Curry, but you do not get to redefine the fundamental nature of our civilization's primary export. Then your civilization is built on slavery, and I have no respect for it. Arthur took a step forward, and despite his exhaustion, his presence filled the room. I've seen what you did to this planet's native species. I've felt their memories of genocide and displacement. I've watched you grow sentient beings in tanks and condition them to die without question. There's a word for people like you in my world. Slavers. And we don't negotiate with slavers. We shut them down. Kaminoan security raised their weapons, but Obi-Wan moved between them and Arthur, hands raised placatingly. Everyone, please, let's not escalate this into violence. Too late, Arthur said, though he didn't move to attack. This entire galaxy is already drowning in violence. The only question is whether anyone has the courage to fight for something better. Tan. We spoke for the first time, her voice carefully modulated. The Republic fleet will arrive within hours. They will want a full accounting of the battle and the unauthorized asset that participated in the defense. We recommend the Jedi take custody of Arthur Curry. His abilities and his philosophies represent a potential security risk. I'm not going anywhere in custody, Arthur said flatly. I'm not a prisoner, and I'm not Republic property, any more than those clones are Kaminoan property. Then what are you? Lama Su demanded. A hero? A revolutionary? A mercenary who fights for ideals he barely understands? Arthur smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. I'm a king from another reality who's decided your galaxy needs someone to remind it what justice actually looks like. And I'm just getting started. Rex cleared his throat, drawing attention. Sir, Arthur, the brothers are organizing. Word spread fast about what you did. What you said. There are clones asking if they could talk to you, officially, about their rights, their future, their choices. Rex, Shakti's voice carried warning. That would be highly irregular. Clones receive orders through chain of command, not political manifestos from dimensional travelers. With respect, General, they're not asking for orders, they're asking for hope. Rex's jaw was set, his stance unwavering. Something we've never had before, something that maybe we deserve. The room fell silent. Arthur could feel the moment balanced on a knife's edge, forces pulling in multiple directions, a decision point that would ripple across whatever came next. Finally, Obi-Wan sighed. I need to contact the Council. This situation has become far too complex for local resolution. Arthur, I'm not placing you under arrest, but I am asking you to remain on Kamino until we can arrange proper transport and negotiations regarding your status. Negotiations? Arthur raised an eyebrow. I'm not a diplomatic problem to be solved. You're an unprecedented situation that has already influenced Republic military assets and challenged fundamental aspects of our society, Obi-Wan said tiredly. That makes you precisely a diplomatic problem, a serious one. Then they'd better send good negotiators, Arthur said, because I'm not compromising on this. Those clones are people. They deserve freedom. And if your Republic can't accept that, then I'll help them find their own path. Lama Su's expression, insofar as Kaminoan features could express emotion, turned calculating and cold. That would be treason, inciting Republic military assets to rebellion. The penalties are severe, Arthur laughed, the sound carrying genuine amusement. You can't commit treason against a government you were never part of. I'm not a Republic citizen. I'm not even from this galaxy. Your laws don't bind me, Prime Minister, and your threats mean nothing to someone who's fought gods and lived. Gods, Tanwi repeated, her tone skeptical. You claim divinity? I claim capability, Arthur corrected, and the will to use it. I've toppled kingdoms and rebuilt them better. I've united warring factions under a single banner of justice. I've made surface dwellers respect the ocean, and ocean dwellers respect the surface. If you think I'm intimidated by bureaucrats and cloners, you've badly misjudged who you're dealing with. Fives grinned despite the tension, earning a sharp look from Rex. Echo's expression was more guarded, but Arthur caught the glimmer of hope in his eyes, the dangerous kind of hope that made people question everything they'd been taught. Shakti's montrals twitched in a pattern Arthur was beginning to recognize as deep concern. Master Kenobi, we need to contain this situation before it metastasizes. If word reaches other clone battalions that there's someone encouraging them to question their service, then maybe those battalions will start thinking for themselves, Arthur interrupted. Would that be so terrible? Soldiers who evaluate their orders instead of blindly following them? Warriors who fight because they believe in the cause, rather than because they were programmed to. It would be chaos, Lama Su stated flatly. The Republic's military effectiveness depends on clone reliability. Introduce doubt, introduce choice, and you introduce battlefield hesitation that costs lives and loses wars. Or you create soldiers who fight harder because they chose their battles, Arthur countered. Mercenaries fight for credits. Conscripts fight because they must. But volunteers fight for something they believe in, and that makes them unstoppable. Obi-Wan's expression was troubled, his hand stroking his beard in a gesture that suggested deep thought. There's wisdom in what you say, Arthur, but the practical realities are designed by people who benefit from the status quo, Arthur finished. I've heard these arguments before. They're always the same. Change is too hard, too expensive, too risky. But you know what's really risky? Building a society on the backs of enslaved beings and pretending it's justice. Rex's comlink chirped, interrupting the escalating confrontation. He answered, listened briefly, then looked up with an expression Arthur couldn't quite read. Sirs, there's a situation developing in the barracks. Multiple squads are requesting to speak with Arthur Curry. The duty officers are trying to maintain order, but the brothers are insistent. Define insistent, Shaktai said sharply. They're not following dispersal orders, General. They're not violent, not insubordinate exactly, but they're refusing to return to quarters until they get answers. About the battle, about what Arthur said, about whether they have rights beyond their service contracts. Lama Su's skin seemed to pale, if such a thing were possible for a Kaminoan. This is precisely the contamination we feared. Taun We activate reconditioning protocols for any clone displaying excessive independence. We cannot allow. You will not touch them. Arthur's voice dropped to a register that carried ocean depths and ancient authority. His hand moved to his trident, not threatening overtly but promising response if needed. Reconditioning. That's another word for brainwashing. You're talking about erasing their thoughts, their questions, their emerging sense of self. That's not happening. You have no authority here, Lama Su countered, but there was uncertainty in his melodic voice. The clones are Kaminoan property under Republic contract. Their conditioning maintenance is within our operational parameters. Then your operational parameters just changed. Arthur's eyes gleamed with dangerous intent. Because if you try to recondition even one clone for the crime of thinking independently, I will personally demonstrate what an angry Atlantean can do to your city's foundations. And trust me, after what I did to that assault ship, you know I'm capable of it. The threat hung in the air, explicit and credible. Through the viewport, the ocean still glowed with bioluminescent patterns, living testimony to Arthur's ability to command forces the Kaminoans had never been able to control. Obi-Wan stepped forward, his voice carrying Jedi calm that barely masked underlying stress. Arthur, threatening violence against Republic facilities? Isn't violence against the Republic, Arthur interrupted. It's defense of sentient beings against their oppressors. There's a difference. And if your Jedi Order can't see that difference, then maybe you're not the peacekeepers you claim to be. Shakti's hand was definitely on her lightsaber now, though she hadn't activated it. You would fight Jedi? You, who cannot touch the Force, against warriors trained since childhood in combat arts honed over millennia? I've fought beings you can't imagine, Arthur said quietly. Underwater gods, kaiju from the deepest trenches, surface world supervillains who could level cities. And I'm still here. I don't need your Force. I have my own power, my own purpose, and my own sense of what's right. That's enough. This is spiraling out of control, Taun We observed clinically. We should place the facility under security lockdown until the Republic fleet arrives. Isolate the affected clone units. Contain Arthur Curry by whatever means necessary. Try it, Arthur challenged. See what happens when you push someone who has nothing to lose and everything to fight for. Because I'm not going home anytime soon. That dimensional rift was one-time chance, and I'm stuck here. Which means I have time. Time to learn about your galaxy. Time to understand your politics. Time to help the clones organize, to find allies, to build something that terrifies people like you. People like me? Lama Su's voice carried genuine confusion beneath its mechanical precision. Slavers, Arthur said simply. People who treat sentient beings as resources. who justify exploitation with economics, who hide behind contracts and legality while committing moral atrocities. I've spent my life fighting people like you, Prime Minister. Sometimes with words, sometimes with actions, but always winning in the end. Rex's comlink chirped again, more urgently this time. He listened, his expression shifting to something approaching alarm. Generals, Arthur, the situation in the barracks has escalated. It's not just a few squads anymore. It's battalions, multiple battalions. They're not rioting, not fighting, but they're standing together, waiting. The duty officers are reporting they've never seen anything like this level of coordinated, I don't know what to call it. Solidarity? Arthur felt something fierce and proud ignite in his chest. These young men, engineered as slaves, conditioned for obedience, raised in sterile facilities to die in someone else's war, were standing up, standing together, demanding recognition of their basic personhood. That's called the first step toward liberation, Arthur said softly. Then, louder, I need to speak to them. Absolutely not, Lama Su said immediately. You will not be permitted to further contaminate our products with your ideology. Your products are waiting for me, Arthur shot back. And they outnumber everyone in this room by several thousand to one. You want to keep this peaceful? Let me talk to them. Let me answer their questions honestly. Because the alternative is you try to force them back into obedience, they resist, and people die. Is that really what you want? Obi-Wan and Shakti exchanged long looks, communicating in that wordless way Arthur had seen between partners who'd fought together. Finally, Shakti nodded reluctantly. We accompany you, Obi-Wan said. Rex, you as well. This needs to remain controlled, non-violent, and Force help us, not turn into an outright rebellion before the Republic fleet arrives. Too late for that, Arthur said, but he was already moving toward the door. The rebellion started the moment someone told those clones they were people. Everything after is just details. They moved through corridors that felt different now, charged with potential energy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Clone troopers they passed stopped and stared, their identical faces showing increasingly individual expressions. Some saluted Rex. Others watched Arthur with barely concealed curiosity. A few whispered to their brothers, and Arthur caught fragments. Destroyed the assault ship. Commanded the sea creatures. Told the Longnecks they were wrong. The barracks occupied an entire section of Tapoka City. Vast chambers designed to house thousands of soldiers in efficient, identical accommodations. When Arthur entered the main assembly area, he stopped short. They were all there. Row after row of white-armored clone troopers, standing at parade rest, but somehow conveying defiance through posture alone. Thousands of identical faces, all turned toward him. The silence was profound, heavy with expectation. Rex stepped forward, his voice carrying command authority despite his youth. Brothers, attention! As one, they snapped to attention, the synchronized movement creating a sound like thunder. Arthur felt the weight of their combined focus. These men who'd never been given a choice, never been told they mattered, never been offered hope beyond their programming. He walked forward, his trident held loosely, his Atlantean armor still showing scorch marks and damage from the battle. He didn't have rank here. He didn't have authority. He just had truth. I'm not going to lie to you, Arthur began, his voice carrying through the chamber without needing amplification. I don't know your galaxy. I don't know your war. I'm from somewhere else, somewhere far away, and I ended up here by accident. But I know injustice when I see it. And what's being done to you, what was done to you from the moment you were conceived in those growth tanks, is injustice. No one moved, no one spoke, but Arthur felt the intensity of their attention sharpen. You were created to be soldiers, engineered to obey, conditioned to accept your role without question. The Kaminoans call you products. The Republic calls you assets. But you know what I call you? People. Living, thinking, feeling people who deserve the same rights as every other sentient being in this galaxy. A murmur rippled through the ranks, quickly suppressed but unmistakable. I fought today, Arthur continued. Fought to protect this facility, to save your lives, to stop the separatists from destroying everything. But I didn't fight for the Republic. I didn't fight for the Kaminoans. I fought for you, because you matter, because your lives have value beyond your tactical utility, because every single one of you deserves the chance to choose your own path. We were made to serve, a voice called from the ranks, hesitant but brave. What else would we do? Arthur smiled. Anything you want. Everything you want. You're young men with skills and intelligence and courage. If you choose to fight, that's honorable. But it should be your choice, made freely, with the option to walk away if you change your mind. That's what freedom means. That's what personhood means. 5 stepped forward from beside Rex, removing his helmet to show his tattooed face. What Arthur's saying, it feels right. Like something we always knew but weren't allowed to think about. We're not machines. We're not droids. We feel things. Fear. Pride. Loss when our brothers die. Doesn't that make us people? Yes, Arthur said simply. That's exactly what makes you people. And people don't belong to governments or corporations. People belong to themselves. The assembly chamber remained locked in profound silence. Thousands of clones processing ideas they'd never been permitted to consider. Arthur could see the conflict playing across their faces, genetic conditioning warring with emerging consciousness, programmed loyalty clashing with the dangerous appeal of self-determination. Then one clone stepped forward from the ranks. His armor bore green markings, and his posture carried the confidence of an officer. He removed his helmet, revealing a face identical to all the others, but marked by a distinctive scar across his left eye. CT-1409, sir. Commander Cody, 212th Attack Battalion. I've served under General Kenobi for 3 years. Fought in 47 major engagements. Lost hundreds of brothers. His voice was steady, but Arthur heard the weight behind it. You're asking us to question everything we are, everything we were made for. That's a heavy thing, sir. I know, Arthur acknowledged, and I'm not asking lightly. But consider this, if you were meant to be nothing but soldiers, why do you feel grief when your brothers die? Why do you form friendships? Why do some of you give yourselves names instead of just numbers? That's not programming. That's personhood breaking through despite your conditioning. Cody's jaw worked, emotions flickering across his face. Some clones, they struggle, develop attachments, question orders. The Kaminoans call it defective behavior. They recondition those brothers, erase the problematic thoughts, reset them back to baseline compliance. We're taught that's necessary. That individuality is a flaw. That's what slavers always teach, Arthur said quietly. That your humanity is a defect, that thinking for yourself is dangerous, that accepting your place is virtue. But those are lies designed to keep you compliant. Your individuality isn't a flaw. It's proof you're alive. Shakti moved forward, her presence commanding attention. Brothers, I have led you in battle. I have fought beside you, bled beside you, mourned beside you. But I need you to understand. What Arthur is describing would fundamentally change the Republic's ability to defend itself. Without the clone army, billions could fall to separatist tyranny. Then maybe the Republic needs to find a better way, Arthur countered. One that doesn't require enslaving sentient beings. Because if the only way to save your civilization is through injustice, maybe your civilization doesn't deserve saving. Obi-Wan's expression suggested he wanted to argue but couldn't quite find the words. His hand had moved away from his lightsaber, and Arthur saw genuine conflict in the Jedi's eyes, a man confronting uncomfortable truths he'd been avoiding. Another clone stepped forward, this one without the markings of command. He was younger looking despite their identical ages, his armor showing less wear. CT-5385, TUP, 501st Legion. Sir, if we're people, if we deserve freedom, what happens to us? We don't know anything except fighting. We've never been off Kamino except for deployments. We don't have homes, families, lives outside the army. How would we even survive? It was the practical question. The one Arthur had been waiting for. You learn. You adapt. You build new lives. same as anyone transitioning from one existence to another. Some of you might choose to keep fighting as volunteers, paid fairly and allowed to resign. Others might become teachers, using your combat experience to train willing recruits. Some might explore civilian life, find new purposes. The point is choice, the freedom to discover who you are beyond what you were made to be. "That's a nice dream," Cody said, but his tone suggested he wanted to believe it. But the practical realities... A massive explosion rocked the facility, cutting him off mid-sentence. Alarms shrieked, red lights flashed, and Arthur felt the city shudder through his connection to the ocean below. "Second wave!" someone shouted. Through the viewports, Arthur saw them. More separatist dropships, a full fleet this time, descending through the perpetual storm. But these weren't standard assault craft. These were larger, more sophisticated, and they were deploying something Arthur hadn't seen before. Droids, but not standard battle droids. These were massive bipedal walking tanks, each standing perhaps 20 meters tall, bristling with heavy weapons and shielding that glowed with active energy fields, and descending with them, sleek starfighters that immediately engaged what little aerial defense Kamino possessed. "AT-TE walkers," Rex breathed, horror in his voice. "Full battalion strength, maybe more, and vulture droids providing air cover. This isn't a raid. This is an invasion." Obi-Wan's comlink activated, and a holographic image appeared. Another Jedi. This one with fierce features and determined eyes. "Master Kenobi, this is Skywalker. I'm inbound with the fleet, but we're still 30 minutes out. Can you hold?" "We'll have to, Anakin," Obi-Wan replied tersely. "The Separatists are deploying heavy assets. This facility is about to become a war zone." The hologram flickered. "I'm coming as fast as I can. Try not to let Arthur start a revolution before I arrive. I've been hearing some very interesting reports." "Too late for that," Arthur muttered, but he was already moving toward the viewport, assessing the tactical situation. The AT-TE walkers were advancing across the landing platforms, their mass driver cannons already firing on Topoka City's defensive emplacements. The aquatic assault ships had also returned, more sophisticated this time, deploying advanced aqua droids that would be harder to counter than the first wave, and descending with the main force, something that made Arthur's tactical instincts scream warnings. A Providence-class destroyer, moving into low orbit and beginning orbital bombardment of specific targets. "They're not trying to capture the facility this time," Arthur said grimly. "They're trying to destroy it completely. Kill the clones, eliminate the genetic templates, cripple the Republic's ability to produce new soldiers. Then we defend it," Shakti said, her lightsaber already ignited. "Brothers, to your stations. This is what you were trained for." But Arthur saw the hesitation in their eyes, the questions his words had planted now warring with years of conditioning. These men had been designed to obey without question, to fight without doubt. Now, in the moment they needed that certainty most, he'd given them reasons to question everything. "Listen to me," Arthur said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I know I've challenged everything you thought you knew. I know I've given you doubts right when you need confidence. But here's the truth. Choosing to fight and being forced to fight are different things. Right now, your brothers are in danger. This facility, for all its problems, is your home. The Separatists are trying to kill everyone here. You can choose to defend it, not because you were programmed to, not because someone ordered you to, but because it's the right thing to do. That's what free people do. They make hard choices in difficult moments." Cody looked at Rex, then at Fives, then back at Arthur. Something resolved in his expression, a decision made freely, perhaps for the first time in his short life. "He's right. The reasons don't matter right now. Our brothers need us. The fight's here, and we're the ones who can win it. Not because the Kaminoans own us, not because the Republic commands us, but because we choose to protect our own." The effect was electric. The hesitation vanished, replaced by focused determination that felt different somehow, sharper, more personal. These men weren't following orders anymore. They were making a choice. 501st with me, Rex roared. "Defensive positions, firing plan beta. Show these clankers what clone troopers can do." 212th, secure the genetic repositories, Cody commanded. If they want to destroy our future, they'll have to go through us first. The assembly dissolved into organized chaos, clones moving with practiced efficiency toward their battle stations. But Arthur noticed the small differences. Brothers clapping each other on the shoulders, brief personal exchanges, a sense of solidarity that transcended mere unit cohesion. They were fighting as people now, not just soldiers. Arthur turned to the Jedi. "I'm going back into the water. Those aqua droids are the real threat. If they breach the foundations again, the whole city falls." "You can't fight an entire fleet alone," Obi-Wan protested. "I'm not alone." Arthur gestured toward the ocean, where bioluminescent patterns already responded to his telepathic call. "I have an army that was here long before the Kaminoans, and it's time they took their world back." He started toward the moon pools, but Shakti's voice stopped him. "Arthur, what you've done here today, the seeds you've planted, this won't end with this battle. The Republic will have to respond. The Jedi Council will demand explanations. The Senate will do whatever it does," Arthur interrupted. "But those clones in there? They'll never be just products again. They'll remember that someone told them they were people. They'll remember they made choices. And that changes everything. It could tear the Republic apart," Shakti warned. "Then maybe it needs to be torn apart and rebuilt better," Arthur said. "I've done it before, in my world. It's painful, costly, hard, but it's necessary. Because some foundations are so corrupt they can't be reformed. They have to be replaced." He dove into the moon pool without waiting for response, the water welcoming him like a lover's embrace. His gills opened, his enhanced senses expanded, and his telepathy reached out to the vast network of marine life that had been waiting for this moment. "They've come back," he projected. "The machines that think they can take your ocean. Are you with me?" The response came as a tidal wave of predatory agreement. From the depths, from the trenches, from hiding places throughout Kamino's vast seas, they came. The ray squids in their dozens, the electric eels in their thousands. Species Arthur had no names for, driven by instinct and his telepathic coordination. The ocean itself seemed to come alive, preparing for war. Arthur swam toward the descending aqua droids, his trident gleaming even in the murky water. Above, he could hear the muffled sounds of battle, blaster fire, explosions, the mechanical grinding of ATTE walkers advancing. But here, in the depths, he would make his stand. The first aqua droid never detected him coming. Arthur struck from below, his enhanced speed and three-dimensional combat instincts making him nearly impossible to track. His trident punched through its shield generators, then its central processor, the Atlantean weapon doing what it was designed for, ending threats to the ocean with brutal efficiency. The marine swarm hit the next wave like a living storm. Ray squids wrapped around droid chassis, crushing shields through sheer persistent pressure. Electric eels swarmed vulnerabilities, overloading systems with coordinated bioelectric strikes. Smaller predators darted in to attack exposed joints and sensors. It was coordinated chaos, orchestrated by Arthur's will, executed by creatures fighting for their ancestral home. But the Separatists had learned from the first attack. These aqua droids were heavier, better shielded, equipped with sonic weapons specifically calibrated to repel marine life. Arthur felt the pain through his telepathic link as creatures recoiled from frequencies that disrupted their sensory organs. "Adapt," he commanded. "Use cover. Attack from angles they can't defend. This is your ocean. You know it better than any machine." The swarm adjusted, becoming more sophisticated in their tactics. They used the city's support structures as cover, ambushed from blind spots, coordinated strikes on single targets to overwhelm defenses. But they were taking casualties, and Arthur felt each death like a personal wound. He pushed deeper, hunting the command unit he knew must be coordinating the droid assault. Found it hanging in the water at medium depth, a larger, more sophisticated droid surrounded by a protective screen of standard units. Its processing power was directing the entire underwater assault, analyzing patterns, adapting tactics in real time. Arthur needed to reach it. But between him and his target were at least 20 aqua droids, all now aware of his presence and converging with mechanical precision. This was going to hurt. He deactivated thought and became pure action. the warrior king his mother had trained him to be, the protector his father had taught him to become. His trident became an extension of his will, moving through water with impossible speed. He dodged blaster fire by reading water displacement, used destroyed droids as shields against torpedo strikes, turned the environment itself into a weapon. A blade extended from a droid's arm, slashing across his shoulder. Arthur felt Atlantean scales crack, felt warm blood mix with cold water, but he didn't slow. He grabbed the offending arm, ripped it free with enhanced strength, and drove it through another droid's optical sensors. 12 droids down, 8 remaining between him and the command unit. A torpedo caught him in the side, the explosion sending him tumbling through the water, ears ringing, ribs screaming protest. Arthur's Atlantean physiology absorbed impacts that would have killed a human, but he wasn't invulnerable. He was accumulating damage, wearing down, and the battle was far from over. "Help him," the matriarch commanded, and suddenly the ray squids were there, massive bodies interposing between Arthur and his attackers. They took blaster fire meant for him, absorbed torpedoes with their bulk, created openings with their sacrifice. Arthur didn't waste it. He shot through the gap they'd created, building speed until he was moving faster than the command droid could track. His trident led, glowing with golden light, channeling every ounce of strength his exhausted body could muster. The impact shattered the command droid's shields, punched through its reinforced chassis, and drove clean through its central processing core. The machine's optical sensors flickered once, twice, then went dark. Without coordination, the remaining Aqua droids faltered, their tactics becoming disjointed and predictable. The Marine swarm fell upon them with renewed fury, and within minutes, the underwater assault was broken. Arthur surfaced inside one of Tipoca City's interior pools, hauling himself onto the platform with arms that felt like lead. His shoulder was still bleeding. His ribs were definitely cracked, and exhaustion hit him like a physical weight. But through the facility's windows, he could see the tide turning above as well. Clone troopers fought with ferocious determination, their tactics showing the experience of 3 years of continuous warfare. The ATTE walkers were falling to concentrated fire and clever ambushes. The vulture droids spun away from defensive batteries that clones operated with precision born of desperation. And in the distance, ships were appearing. Republic vessels finally arriving, their weapons already engaging the Separatist fleet. Arthur collapsed onto his back, staring at the ceiling, feeling the satisfaction of victory mixed with the pain of cost. Clones had died today. Marine creatures had died today. But they'd won. They'd defended their home through choice, through coordination, through the simple determination of free beings fighting for something that mattered. A shadow fell over him. Arthur looked up to find Rex standing there, his armor scorched and dented, his expression exhausted but alive. "We held them," the commander said simply. "The fleet's mopping up, the facility is secure, and every clone who fought today did it knowing they chose to be here. That's something I can't quite explain, but it feels different. Better." Arthur managed a tired smile. "That's what freedom feels like, Commander. Get used to it, because after today, nothing goes back to the way it was." Rex nodded slowly, then extended his hand. Arthur took it, letting the clone pull him to his feet despite his injuries. "Thank you," Rex said quietly, "for seeing us, for treating us like we matter, for giving us something worth fighting for beyond just following orders." "You always mattered," Arthur replied. "I just reminded you of it." Through the window, the Republic fleet assembled in orbit, and Arthur knew that the real battle was just beginning. Not the battle of blasters and explosions, but the battle of ideas, of rights, of fundamental questions about what it meant to be a person in this galaxy. He'd arrived on Kamino by accident. But maybe, he thought, as he watched the clones celebrate their hard-won victory, maybe it wasn't an accident at all. Maybe the universe, or the Force, or whatever governed this reality, had brought him here precisely because this galaxy needed someone to ask the uncomfortable questions. Someone to remind them that justice mattered more than convenience. Someone to prove that even in a galaxy far, far away, the simple truth remained. All sentient beings deserved freedom, and Arthur Curry, King of Atlantis, dimensional refugee and unexpected revolutionary, was just the man to make them remember it. The Republic fleet's arrival brought relief and complications in equal measure. Arthur watched from a medical bay viewport as Star Destroyers established orbital positions, their weapons still tracking for any remaining separatist forces. The Kaminoans had insisted on treating his injuries. Apparently, dimensional anomalies whose saved facilities were worth preserving, and Arthur had been too exhausted to argue. A medical droid was sealing the gash on his shoulder when the door opened to admit someone new. Arthur's first impression was of barely controlled intensity wrapped in Jedi robes. A young man with sandy hair, a mechanical hand, and eyes that had seen too much combat for someone so young. "So you're the one causing all the trouble," the newcomer said, his voice carrying an edge between amusement and concern. "Anakin Skywalker. I hear you've been teaching my men to question orders." "Your men?" Arthur raised an eyebrow, ignoring the medical droid's chirped protest as he moved. "They're not property, Skywalker. Not yours, not the Republic's." Anakin's expression flickered with something complex. "I know that. I know what it feels like to be owned." His mechanical hand flexed unconsciously. "I was a slave once, on Tatooine. My mother was a slave. So don't lecture me about freedom, Arthur Curry." That brought Arthur up short. He studied the young Jedi with new understanding, seeing past the bravado to the scars underneath. "Then you understand why what's happening here is wrong." "I understand it's complicated," Anakin said, moving to the viewport. "The clones were created before the war started. We found them, ready-made, and the Republic needed them to survive. If we'd refused to use them, billions would have died to separatist conquest. So yes, it's wrong. But what was the alternative? Build a different army. Take the time to do it right, even if that meant losing ground initially. Accept short-term losses to avoid long-term injustice." Arthur stood, pushing the medical droid aside. "There's always an alternative. People just don't want to pay the price for the moral one." "Easy to say when it's not your galaxy burning," Anakin shot back. "You've been here, what, 3 days? And you're ready to tear down everything we've built because it doesn't meet your standards? If what you've built requires enslaving sentient beings, then yes, it should be torn down." Arthur's voice carried ocean depths. "I don't care how necessary it seemed, how expedient it was, or how many people benefited. Slavery is slavery, and it's always wrong." Anakin's jaw clenched, emotions warring across his face. Finally, he said quietly, "The clones, they're my friends. Rex, Fives, Echo, Cody. They're brothers in every way that matters. I've bled with them, fought beside them, trusted them with my life. And you're right. They deserve better than what they have. But destroying the Republic to give it to them helps no one." "I'm not trying to destroy the Republic," Arthur corrected. "I'm trying to force it to live up to its own ideals. There's a difference." Before Anakin could respond, Obi-Wan entered with Shaak Ti and, unexpectedly, a holographic projection. The figure was elderly, green-skinned, with large, pointed ears and eyes that seemed to see through surfaces to truth beneath. "Master Yoda," Anakin said, immediately respectful. The hologram's gaze fixed on Arthur with unsettling intensity. "The one from beyond you are. Felt your presence I have. Strange to the Force, yet powerful in your own way. Disrupted much you have in short time." "I didn't mean to disrupt anything," Arthur said carefully. "I was pulled here against my will and responded to what I found. If that's disruptive, maybe the problem isn't me. It's the system I'm disrupting." Yoda's expression was unreadable. "Uncomfortable truths, you speak. Challenge the Jedi, you do. Challenge the Republic. Question what we have accepted as necessary. Tell me, Arthur Curry, what would you have us do? Abandon the clones to separatist slaughter? Let the galaxy burn for principle? I'd have you start treating them like people," Arthur said bluntly. "Give them rights. Pay them. Let them choose whether to serve. Create paths for those who want to leave. Acknowledge that using them as property, even in a just cause, is itself an injustice that must be corrected." And if the clones choose to fight? Shakti asked. If we offer freedom and they volunteer to continue serving? Then you have soldiers fighting for something they believe in, which makes them stronger than any conditioning could. Arthur met each of their gazes in turn. But it has to be real choice, not coercion dressed up as freedom. Yoda was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes seeming to weigh Arthur against some internal measure. Brought here by accident, you believe yourself to be. But accidents, the Force rarely makes. A purpose, perhaps you have. A mirror to hold up, showing us what we have become in our desperation. The Council has been debating the ethics of the clone army since the war began, Obi-Wan admitted. But practical considerations always outweighed moral ones. We told ourselves we'd address it after the war, when there was time to properly reform the system. There's never time, Arthur said. That's what people always tell themselves. We'll do the right thing later when it's convenient. But later never comes. The injustice becomes normalized, accepted, and then it's just the way things are. Wise words, Yoda acknowledged, but the Senate convince you must. The Republic's politicians, not the Jedi, decide such matters. And they... His expression suggested deep frustration. See only military necessity and economic cost. Then maybe it's time the clones spoke for themselves, Arthur suggested. Let them testify before the Senate. Let the galaxy see them as people, hear their voices, understand what's being done to them. You can't ignore injustice when it's looking you in the face and asking for basic rights. Anakin's expression shifted to something thoughtful. There's precedent. The Senate holds hearings on military matters. If we could get clone representatives to testify, show the galaxy they're not just droids with flesh. The Kaminoans would never permit it, Shakti said. Their entire economy depends on clone production. They'd see it as breach of contract. Let them, Arthur said coldly. I've been reading about your republic while recovering. You have laws against slavery, yes? If the clones are people, and they are, then the contracts claiming them as property are illegal. Let the Kaminoans sue. Let them try to defend their business model in front of the entire galaxy. See how that works out for them. You're talking about a legal and political battle that could take years, Obi-Wan warned. And in the meantime, the war continues. The clones continue fighting. The injustice continues. But with acknowledgement, Arthur pressed, with the Republic officially recognizing the clones as sentient beings deserving of rights, even as the details are worked out. That's not perfect, but it's progress. It's the first step toward justice. Yoda's ears twitched, a gesture Arthur couldn't quite interpret. Convinced? You have not convinced us all, but thinking you have made us. Questions raised that ignored, they cannot be. The Council will debate, the Senate will be petitioned, and the clones, his ancient eyes gleamed with something like approval, will be heard. A commotion outside interrupted the conversation. Raised voices, Kaminoan and human, filtering through the door. Then it burst open, revealing Lama Su flanked by security, with Rex, Cody, and a delegation of clone officers behind them. This is unacceptable, Lama Su was saying, his melodic voice strained. You are Republic property under Kaminoan contract. You do not have the authority to demand... We demand nothing, Rex interrupted, his voice steady. We request, as sentient beings, as people. We request the right to speak for ourselves about our own future. Lama Su's large eyes shifted to Arthur, and for the first time, the Kaminoans' clinical detachment cracked to show genuine fury. You have poisoned our products, introduced ideological contamination that threatens our entire industry. The Kaminoan government demands your immediate removal from this facility and compensation for damages to our intellectual property. Your intellectual property, Arthur repeated slowly, dangerously, is standing right in front of you, asking to be treated like living beings, and you're worried about your profit margins. We are worried about contractual obligations and economic stability, Lama Su corrected. The Republic commissioned an army, we delivered. If they wish to renegotiate terms to include clone rights, welfare programs, and... His tone suggested the concept was absurd. Freedom clauses, The costs would increase exponentially. The Senate would never approve such expenditure. Then maybe the Senate needs to understand the true cost of the army they're using, Cody said, his scarred face set with determination. The cost in clone lives. In brothers who'll never know anything but war. In sentient beings treated as ammunition to be expended. Yoda's hologram turned to study the clone delegation. Speak your truth, you wish to? Before the Senate? Before the galaxy? Yes, Master Yoda, Rex said. We're soldiers. We'll fight if that's needed. But we want it to be our choice. We want to know that if we fall, it's for something we believed in, not just because we were programmed to obey. Sedition, Lama Su stated flatly. This is clone sedition. A contractual violation. These units should be decommissioned and... Arthur's trident was suddenly in his hand, the weapon's point inches from Lama Su's throat. He hadn't consciously moved. Instinct had taken over. The protective fury of a king confronting someone threatening his people. Finish that sentence, Arthur said softly. And I will show you exactly what happens when you threaten people under my protection. These clones are not products. They are not units. They are people. And if you try to decommission even one of them, you'll learn why my enemies call me the most dangerous man in the ocean. Every weapon in the room, clone blasters, Jedi lightsabers, Kaminoan security rifles, suddenly activated. The tension was explosive, violence seconds away from erupting. Stand down, Obi-Wan commanded. Everyone! This solves nothing! Arthur held position for another heartbeat, letting Lama Su see the absolute conviction in his eyes. Then he lowered the trident, stepping back but not sheathing the weapon. The clones will testify, Yoda said, his voice carrying quiet authority. Arrange it. The council will. And in the meantime, no decommissioning will occur. The Jedi Order guarantees their safety. Challenge this. The Kaminoans may, but at great cost to their reputation and continued Republic contracts. It was a threat wrapped in diplomatic language, but effective. Lama Su's expression, if those alien features could express emotion, showed calculation and defeat. The Kaminoan government will file formal protests. We will seek legal remedy. This is not over. No, Arthur agreed. It's just beginning. But for the first time, it's beginning honestly. 3 standard weeks after the battle, Arthur stood in a Senate viewing gallery on Coruscant, watching history being made below. The Senate chamber was massive beyond Earth comprehension. A sphere perhaps a kilometer across, filled with hundreds of hovering platforms, each representing star systems with populations in the billions. And in the center, standing before the Supreme Chancellor and the assembled representatives of the Galactic Republic, were Rex, Cody, Fives, Echo, and 5 other clones chosen to represent their brothers. They wore their armor, white and battle-scarred, marked with personal insignia and unit colors. They stood at parade rest, but their bearing carried something new. Dignity born of choice, rather than conditioning. Arthur watched from beside Obi-Wan and Anakin, his trident leaning against the gallery rail. He'd spent the past 3 weeks on Coruscant, teaching the clones how to articulate their position, helping them understand the political landscape they were navigating. It had been exhausting, frustrating, and ultimately hopeful. This could change everything, Anakin murmured. Or it could fail spectacularly and make things worse. It's already changed everything, Arthur replied. They're being heard. That's victory in itself. Rex was speaking now, his voice amplified throughout the vast chamber. Honored representatives, we are the Grand Army of the Republic. We have fought in every major engagement of this war. We have bled for worlds we've never seen, died for causes we were never asked to understand. And we have done it without question, without complaint, without choice. The Senate was silent. Thousands of beings listening to something unprecedented. We were created to be soldiers, Rex continued. Engineered, conditioned, and deployed. Many of you see us as the Republic's greatest asset. Some see us as necessary tools. A few see us as expensive resources. But today, we ask you to see us as something else. People. Cody stepped forward. We don't demand to stop fighting. Many of us believe in the Republic, believe in defending freedom against tyranny. But we ask for the freedom to make that choice ourselves. We ask for rights. The right to refuse orders that violate our conscience. The right to leave military service if we choose. The right to be treated as sentient beings rather than property. A murmur rippled through the Senate. Some supportive, many skeptical, others openly hostile. A senator from the core worlds activated her platform's microphone. The cost of granting these rights would be astronomical. Clone production would need to be restructured. Training would take longer. Voluntary service means some clones might refuse deployment, creating strategic vulnerabilities. The Republic cannot afford such luxury during wartime. With respect, Senator, Fives said, his tattooed face set with determination. The Republic cannot afford to build its defense on slavery. Because that's what we are, slaves. Created without consent, used without choice, expendable without consequence. If your Republic requires slavery to survive, then what exactly are you defending? The question hung in the chamber like an accusation. Arthur watched the senators' reactions. Some showed shame, others anger, many confusion. They'd never been forced to confront this reality before. The clones had been abstract, distant, easy to ignore. Now they were here, speaking truth, and ignorance was no longer an option. The Supreme Chancellor, Palpatine, Arthur had learned, though something about the man set his instincts on edge, spoke for the first time. His voice was measured, grandfatherly, perfectly calibrated for political effect. These are troubling questions you raise, Commander Rex. Questions that deserve serious consideration. However, we are at war. The Separatists grow bolder daily. Any disruption to our military capabilities could cost billions of lives. Surely you understand the need for patience, for gradual reform rather than radical change. How many more of my brothers have to die while we wait for gradual reform? Rex challenged. How many generations of clones will be born, used, and discarded before the Republic decides the time is right for justice? Arthur felt pride swell in his chest. These young men, created as slaves, conditioned for obedience, were standing before the most powerful government in the galaxy and demanding recognition of their personhood. Whatever happened next, they'd already won something precious, their own voice. The debate raged for hours. Senators argued economics, military necessity, legal precedent, and philosophical principles. Some supported the clones, moved by their testimony. Others worried about cost and strategic implications. A few openly advocated for maintaining the status quo, arguing that clones were fundamentally different from natural beings and didn't require the same rights. Those arguments, Arthur noted with satisfaction, were met with increasing disapproval from other senators. The clones' testimony had shifted public opinion, made it impossible to deny their sentience and the injustice of their treatment. Finally, as the Coruscant sun set beyond the Senate chamber's transparent sections, the vote was called. The measure was compromise legislation. Not everything the clones deserved, but more than Arthur had expected. It officially recognized clones as sentient beings with basic rights. It established a clone welfare program, created pathways for military discharge, guaranteed fair treatment, and most importantly, acknowledged that future clone production would require informed consent and voluntary service agreements. It wasn't perfect. The transition would take years. Many clones would continue serving under pre-existing conditions, while details were worked out. But it was a start. The vote passed, narrowly but decisively. The Senate chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some platforms celebrated, others expressed outrage, many simply looked exhausted. And in the center, 8 clone troopers stood at attention, their identical faces showing identical emotions. Hope. Arthur left the gallery and made his way to the Senate floor, where the clones were being congratulated by supportive senators and glared at by others. Rex saw him coming and broke formation, approaching with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. "We did it," the commander said simply. "Not everything, but something. A foundation to build on." "You did it," Arthur corrected. "I just reminded you that you could. The courage. The words, the stand. That was all you." Fives joined them, his expression jubilant. "Do you know what this means? Future clones won't be slaves. They'll be volunteers, citizens, people with rights and choices and futures beyond just dying in battle. And current clones have options now," Echo added, arriving with Cody. "We can finish our service, or we can leave and find new lives. It's not perfect, but it's more than we ever thought we'd have." Obi-Wan and Anakin approached, both looking thoughtful. "You've started something that will reshape the Republic," Obi-Wan said to Arthur. "Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen." "It's good," Anakin said firmly. "The Republic should be better than this, should honor the people fighting for it. Maybe we needed someone from outside to show us what we'd become." Arthur looked out over the Senate chamber, at the vast assembly of beings from across the galaxy. "In my world, we fought a war over slavery. It cost hundreds of thousands of lives and nearly destroyed our nation. But we emerged better, not perfect, but better. This galaxy will face similar struggles. The transition won't be easy. There will be setbacks, resistance, people who preferred the old ways. But you've taken the first step. The rest is just persistence." "Will you stay?" Rex asked. "Help us navigate what comes next?" Arthur felt the pull of that request. These men had become something like friends, or at least brothers in arms. He'd invested himself in their cause, seen them grow from conditioned soldiers to thinking individuals. The idea of abandoning them now felt wrong, but he also felt the ocean's call, not Kamino's ocean, but Earth's, the Atlantic, the Pacific, his kingdom, his people. Atlantis needed its king, and Mara, his queen, would be searching for him, might already think him dead. "I have my own world to get back to," Arthur said gently. "My own ocean, my own people who need me. But I'll help as long as I'm here, and I'll make sure you have the tools to fight this battle without me." "The Jedi are researching your arrival," Obi-Wan said. "The dimensional rift that brought you here. Master Yoda believes it may be possible to recreate the phenomenon, send you home. It would take time, resources, study of the Force in ways we've rarely attempted, but—" "Do it," Arthur said immediately. "Please. I've done what I can here. Now I need to get home." Over the following weeks, Arthur divided his time between the Jedi Temple and the clone barracks. With the Jedi, he underwent tests, answered questions, and allowed them to study the dimensional energies that clung to him like residue from his crossing. The work was slow, frustrating, often seeming impossible. With the clones, he taught them about rights and representation, about organizing and advocating for themselves, about the long game of political change. He introduced them to sympathetic senators, helped establish clone advocacy groups, and most importantly, showed them they had power beyond their military capabilities. Rex and Cody proved natural leaders in this new arena. Fives and Echo became passionate advocates, speaking to other clone units, spreading the message of personhood and choice. The movement grew, spreading through the Grand Army like fire through dry grass, and Arthur watched with satisfaction as these manufactured soldiers became something their creators never intended. Free men with agency, purpose, and hope for futures they would define themselves. 3 months after the Senate vote, Master Yoda summoned Arthur to the Jedi Temple's highest meditation chamber. The ancient Jedi stood before a complex array of technology and Force-enhanced crystals, his expression grave but hopeful. "Ready we are," Yoda said simply. "The rift, recreate it we can. Home, you may go, Arthur Curry. But know this, forgotten you will not be. Changed this galaxy you have, and grateful we are for the uncomfortable truths you forced us to confront." Arthur looked out over Coruscant's endless cityscape, then back at Yoda. "Will they be okay? The clones? Will the Republic honor the new laws?" "Fight for it, they will," Yoda assured him. "With Jedi support, with allies in the Senate, with their own courage. Perfect, the outcome will not be, but better. Much better than before you arrived." Rex, Cody, Fives, Echo, and dozens of other clones had assembled to see him off. They stood at attention, but their eyes showed emotions conditioning had never prepared them for: gratitude, sadness, determination. You gave us something we didn't know we needed, Rex said. The understanding that we mattered, that our lives had value beyond tactical calculations. We'll never forget that. And we'll make sure every clone, every new brother knows it too. Arthur clasped Rex's forearm in a warrior's grip. You were always people. I just reminded you. The rest, the courage, the stand, the change, that was all you. Be proud of what you've accomplished. He said his goodbyes, embraced brothers in arms, and offered final advice to the Jedi about continuing the work he'd started. Then he stepped into the dimensional rift chamber, feeling the energy building around him, the Force being bent in ways it rarely was, creating a tear in reality itself. May the Force be with you, Obi-Wan called. And may the ocean carry you home, Rex added. Arthur smiled, gripped his trident tight, and stepped into the rift. The journey home was nothing like the arrival. Where before had been chaos and pain, now Arthur felt guided, pulled by something that recognized him as foreign, returning him to where he belonged. Colors bled and reformed, dimensions folded and unfolded, and then he hit water. Earth water, Atlantic water. The taste was familiar, the temperature perfect, the pressure welcoming. Arthur's gills opened, his enhanced senses confirmed what his heart already knew. He was home. He surfaced to find himself in the Mariana Trench, exactly where he'd been conducting experiments when the rift had taken him. His Atlantean scientists were there, their equipment still operational, their expressions shifting from focused concentration to absolute shock as their king emerged from the depths they'd been searching for 3 months. Your Majesty! The lead scientist gasped. You're alive! We thought. The energy readings showed. Where have you been? Somewhere far away, Arthur said, exhaustion hitting him now that safety was assured. Somewhere that needed me. But I'm home now. The return to Atlantis was triumphant. Mara nearly crushed him with the strength of her embrace, tears streaming down her face as she demanded answers he struggled to articulate. How could he explain a galaxy far, far away? Clone soldiers and Jedi Knights? An ocean world where he'd become a symbol of freedom for manufactured men? But he tried. And as the story unfolded, in throne rooms and private chambers, in addresses to his kingdom and quiet conversations with his queen, Arthur realized something profound. The experience had changed him. He'd been the king of Atlantis, the protector of Earth's oceans, a hero among heroes. But on Kamino, he'd been something more, proof that justice transcended universes, that some truths were universal, and that one voice speaking truth could change the course of nations. The clones had taught him that freedom was never given. It had to be claimed. That personhood was inherent, not granted. That the courage to stand against injustice mattered more than power or position. And somewhere in another galaxy, Arthur knew those lessons were taking root. The clones were building new lives, advocating for themselves, transforming from property into people. The Republic was grappling with uncomfortable truths it had long avoided. And the Force itself, perhaps, had been reminded that even galaxies far, far away had to answer to justice. Arthur Curry had arrived on Kamino by accident and left as a revolutionary. He'd commanded seas in 2 universes, fought battles in waters light years apart, and proven that whether beneath Earth's waves or Kamino's storms, some principles remained constant. Every sentient being deserved freedom. Every voice deserved to be heard. And every ocean, regardless of which reality it belonged to, needed a king willing to defend it. The multiverse was vast, filled with countless realities and infinite possibilities. But in at least 2 of them, the name Arthur Curry meant something. Justice, courage, and the unshakable conviction that tyranny, whether practiced by Kaminoans or surface dwellers, by Sith Lords or corrupt governments, would always find a champion willing to stand against it. In the depths of Kamino's oceans, ancient species still celebrated the strange visitor who'd given them hope. In the barracks of the Grand Army, clones told stories of the man who'd reminded them they were people. And in Atlantis, a king sat on his throne, forever changed by a journey he'd never planned, and a fight he'd never expected but would never regret. The Force connected all things in its galaxy, But justice, Arthur had learned, connected all things everywhere. And that was a power no darkness could ever truly extinguish. May the Force be with you. More stories await.